Hi everyone, welcome back to the second lesson in this series on modern Indian history. The last lesson was on one of the pillars of the British rule in India. It was related to the civil services, and in today's lesson we'll be learning about another important pillar, which was the army. Now, you need to understand first and foremost as to what was the function of the British Army or a unit of the army operating in India under the British. So the first objective was that it was the chief instrument to conquer Indian powers, but obvious to quell any sort of revolt or uprising that may arise or would arise while they were trying to subject India to British rule. The army served to quell those kinds of rebellion. The second objective was it defended the British Empire in India from foreign rivals. Again, very important. When you do read modern Indian history, you will find out that it wasn't just the Indians against the British, but the British did face a lot of backlash, or there were other foreign powers that were trying to invade these provinces like the Northwest Frontier Province, etc. You will find out about the Anglo-Sikh wars, you'll find out about the Afghan wars, and Afghanistan, interestingly, was a buffer territory of sorts between the British and the Russians. So that's that. Then the third thing is it safeguarded the British regime from the ever-present threat of internal rebellion and revolt, which was of course again very, very important. And the last objective was also that it was the chief instrument for expanding and defending the British Empire in Asia and Africa. A very important role of any power that seeks to subject people to its authority is that it should project a strong image, and this strong army enabled the British to project that kind of image. Now, the greatest contribution to the reform of the army of the East India Company came from Dalhousie. He was the one in whose reign the Bengal artillery headquarters were shifted from Calcutta to Meerut. Then also the permanent East India Company headquarters were shifted from Calcutta to Shimla. This process was eventually completed in 1865, and a very interesting bit of information, in fact, Shimla did become a very popular place as such for the British rule in India. It was a hill station, and the Governor General's summer residence was established here, and later on it was called the Vice Regal Lodge, in fact. So that's something to know. Then Dalhousie had foreseen the danger in the numerical increase of Indians in the army, and consequently he imposed reduction in the Indian element. He did seek to reduce that, but even so, despite that reduction, the number of Indian soldiers stood at more than 2 lakh in 1856 as against only 45,000 Europeans. Now, Dalhousie, he did impress upon the Home Authority the importance and the necessity of increasing the number of European soldiers in India, so that an equipoise could be established between the European troops and the Indian troops. Now, why was this important? It was quite important because you had to show that ultimately who was ruling? It was the Europeans. It was part of the thought process of the British rule in India that they were on a civilizing mission of sorts, or what has often been called the white man's burden. And ultimately it should be the Europeans then who are in commanding positions of authority, and they would keep the Indian soldiers disciplined and under control. So this was very, very important, and this Dalhousie time and again impressed upon the higher authority. Now, the bulk of the company's army consisted of Indian soldiers who were recruited chiefly from areas which are presently under UP and Bihar. So, the term Purabia was used. This is, because the region is Purab as such, or east. And Awadh was called a nursery of sepoys because that is where a majority of the soldiers were coming from. Now, one feature remained unchanged till last, and this takes us back to what I just mentioned. From the time of Cornwallis, the high officers were exclusively English men, and at the time of the Great Revolt, the highest post for an Indian was that of Subedar. So, they were not allowed to advance up the rankings as much, keeping in mind the fact that I just mentioned. The organization of the Indian segment of the army was based on the policy of balance and counterpoise, or divide and rule, to prevent another uprising. Now, when we mention another uprising, we basically mean the revolt of 1857 that had already happened, and in order to quell any such uprising or to prevent any such uprising from happening in future, this was the policy that was followed. So what they did is any sort of communal, casteist, regional loyalties, tribal loyalties, they were encouraged among Indian troops inter se amongst each other, so that it would curb the development of feelings of nationalism among the soldiers. See, they firmly, divide and rule was a very common policy that they followed. We've often heard about it, and they felt that we should not let any kind of united feeling of nationalism develop among Indian troops. Otherwise, they might revolt against us. If they keep to looking at the differences that exist among them, and they keep emphasizing upon them based on whatever, community, caste, etc., we will be safe. Then soldiers from regions and communities that had participated in the 1857 uprising were declared to be non-martial, and they were not recruited in large numbers in the army henceforth. Whereas there was another segment of the populace from another region that was deemed to be martial or declared to be martial, and that they were fit to be recruited in the army, and they were then recruited in large numbers. Now, before we end this lesson, there is something which is very interesting. It's called the White Mutiny. Slightly confusing as well, because this term has often been used for a number of separate incidents. Now, there are three main which I will discuss with you here. Why is the term White Mutiny used? Because essentially it was a mutiny uprising by Europeans against Europeans, or by European troops against the European commanders. So it's basically whites against whites, to put it blankly. The first is the Monghir Mutiny, or which is actually Munger, present day Munger, 1766. In 1766, the Court of Directors had decided to reduce the bhatta, or the field allowance, that was being given to the East India Company troops, and this had been doubled under Mir Jafar when he became Governor General of Bengal. Then Robert Clive, he enforced this, but the officers of the East India Company troops, they tried to stop this. The troops threw up their commissions in an act of defiance, but ultimately Clive successfully suppressed this mutiny. So you can obviously read more about each of these in detail, but I'm just mentioning so that you're aware that there is something of this term by this name that exists. The second is the White Mutiny from 1859 to 1861. After the revolt of 1857, the administration of British rule in India was taken over by the Crown, and there was in fact an Act for the Good Governance of India that was passed. And until then, there had been two units of the army. So one was the Queen's or the Royal Army, and then there was a separate independent East India Company unit. Now what happened, that the latter, which is the East India Company unit, they were asked to pledge allegiance to the Queen and the Royal Army, and to transfer, basically to get transferred from this unit to the Royal Army now. So the terms of the transfer were not very clear. These soldiers were also not given any prior time or notice of the proposed transfer. Lord Canning was here at this time. And interestingly, there were a lot of cultural differences between both the units as well. The officers who were in the Royal Army were deemed to be senior than the ones in the East India Company unit, and these were all points of contention that these soldiers in the East India Company unit had at that time, including the fact that there was a bhatta for operations outside their home territories. They were eligible to get that as long as they were part of that independent TIC unit, but this proposed transfer meant that that bhatta or allowance would also stop. So there was a mutiny, and it was largely successful. So they were either, they got the allowance, the ones who were staying back, and the rest got the option to actually get rid of their obligations, and they could just go back home. And then there was something called the Great White Mutiny. This resentment started in 1807. It's sort of, the reasons are similar to what happened in Munger, etc. at that time. This resentment started in 1807 when Sir George Barlow was appointed the governor of Madras, and steps like suspending officers without trial, ignoring the recommendations of the previous governor and commander-in-chief for equalization of allowance in Madras with Bengal. In Bengal it was higher, so all this was ignored by him. Then there was abolition of tent allowance that was granted to commanding officers in 1802. This tent allowance was basically the commanding officers got contracts to be in charge of everything for setting up operations in field, setting up tents, carts, etc., etc. So this contract was also essentially eliminated, and it also, the new policy excluded the commander-in-chief from the council, which meant that there was no one to basically advance the interests of soldiers and troops before the council. So the soldiers were not happy with this. So the first open act of defiance took place in 1809, but this particular revolt was subsequently suppressed. So this is pretty much it for this particular pillar. You can of course read more. This was just to supplement your general preparation. I hope this was useful for you. And yes, in yesterday's lesson I had asked you a question about who was the first Indian to qualify the civil services exam. It was Satyendranath Tagore, and I think someone had commented, I think it was Anu Shukla. So good answer there. And for this lesson, yeah, maybe you could mention in the comments as to what policy of Dalhousie was in force in India till 1856. It was considered to be a very unfair policy. It was a doctrine of dash. So please mention what that dash is in the comments. Thank you so much.